Welcome to a brand new episode of the Bold Take Podcast. I'm Austin Hill. With me, as always, is Austin Waiter, and we're back talking college football action. And this was an exciting weekend. A lot of big matchups, and for some teams that got upset last week, this is a chance to kind of prove yourself and work your way into that playoff conversation again. Um, but let's start here on Friday night. We had Arizona State upset number 16 Utah 27-19. And Utah thought maybe they had avoided, kind of a crazy weekend with having their bye week last week. But clearly, Arizona State has been a much better team than anticipated. They now moved to 5-1, and now with a big top 25 win. You got to wonder what this team can do, not just in the Big 12 now, but what could they potentially do on the national landscape?
Hey, with Cam Scattaboo, anything's possible. I'm just going to say that. With him as your running back, anything's possible. He has been incredible this year. Has been on my player of the week list twice. I love seeing him on your list as well. You got to respect the legend.
Yep.
My biggest worry with this whole game, though, is that Utah had Cam Rising in this game. The offense still struggled. He didn't look good. Now he's officially ruled out for the season. I mean, it's not looking good for Utah now. You take a look, they're 4-2. It kind of got to see how things go from here with no starting quarterback, really. At least as elite caliber as Cam Rising. But this is literally going to be just like last year. Really good defense with a questionable offense. It's just going to be the same Utah from last year. But Arizona State, yeah, Arizona State's now 5-1. And like we said, the Big 12, if no one wants to win it, there's some of these guys that are up for the taking. My question with Arizona State, though, their quarterback, Sam Levitt, he's got an injury. He's out for the next 2 or 3 weeks. So he's going to be out for a little bit. I don't know if you know who Arizona State's backup quarterback is. I want to find out if you do.
I do not.
It is the one, the only Jeff Sims from Nebraska
Wow.
and Georgia Tech. So they're going to rely on him to be their quarterback over the next 2 weeks. I don't know how good or bad that could be, but nonetheless, they got the big win on Friday night. This was one of my bets of the week from last week, so I appreciate it working out. Whenever I saw Cam Rising was playing, I got a little worried, not going to lie. But
Yeah.
I'd already locked in the bet, so I had no choice but to roll with it. So, but it was a good win for Arizona State, and yet another who the heck thought they'd be a contender in the Big 12?
Yeah. It seems like the usual suspects in the Big 12 and the teams we thought joining the Big 12 that would have the biggest impact clearly aren't the biggest shiners right now. It's a bunch of these teams that we didn't have super high expectations for. But then we have number 11 Notre Dame, and they really had their way with Stanford. It was a slow start to the game for the Irish, but eventually going out and getting the job done. Um, not much to say about this one except for I don't know how anybody voting for the AP poll looked at this game and said, "Yeah, Notre Dame should go down a spot in the poll." I was a little bit upset with that. Obviously, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I thought this was pure domination. And Notre Dame, I don't know. To me, it looks like they've gotten better and better week in and week out from the Northern Illinois loss.
I just think they dropped down courtesy of, like we're going to talk about Tennessee dropping down a bit. I think they were just unfortunate with that. But no, they took care of business against Stanford. And, hey, big matchup. Obviously, they take on Georgia Tech this weekend. We'll see how that goes. But a top 25 matchup could be on the line next week with Navy. So that could be a lot of fun. But they got to handle business against Georgia Tech. It was a good win for them. They dominated Stanford like we all expected them to. So yeah, they keep it up right where they're at. I know people worry maybe about them dropping down a spot, but that's just because Tennessee dropped down 3 spots due to a performance I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, then we had number 23 Illinois surviving an OT thriller with Purdue 50-49. And look, I think although this is a little bit closer than Illinois probably wants to play with Purdue, they've still got only the one loss on the season. And it's to Penn State, who keeps rising and rising in the top 25. Um, and a win in the Big Ten is a big win for this team. And look, I was saying, personally, I would have had them out of the top 25 the last couple of weeks. Nothing really against Illinois. I'm an Illinois guy. But now being able to see them get out and get another win in the Big Ten win a close game. I think they're trying to solidify their place in this top 25.
And Luke Altmaier continues to be incredible. Probably, I am amazed there's not more talk about him at quarterback, what he's done this year. I believe he's only thrown one interception this year against Penn State, but he's been, I think, like 14, 15 touchdowns, one pick. I don't know how many yards officially, but yeah, he's been doing good. The offense has been clicking. I will say it was interesting for Purdue. They started a new quarterback this week. I think his name was, what was it? It was Ryan Brown or Ryan Brownie, something like that. But he was a freshman. He went out in his first start and did really good against this Illinois defense. That really did impress me in this one. But this was way closer than I thought it'd be. Illinois was dominating in the first half, so I really didn't pay that much attention. And then as we got to the start of the fourth quarter, this game got really exciting and a lot of fun. And I respected Purdue going for two and going for the win. I had you're 1-4 on the road against a ranked opponent. What do you got to lose? So I was really excited to see that game. It was great for Illinois, but it's positive for Purdue down the line with this offense if this freshman Ryan Brown can continue to play this well, especially with a top two team coming to Purdue this Friday night. It's setting up, Austin. It's setting
Yeah,
up for the classic Purdue trap game.
something we'll hint at and talk about a little bit later. Of course, you knew if you've listened to the podcast, you're a college football fan, you knew that that was going to be a discussion for next week. But then we have number 7 Bama barely dodging a second straight unranked loss with a 27-25 victory over South Carolina. And look, I hate what's happened to South Carolina here. They're a couple of plays, honestly, just a couple plays away from having two huge top 25 wins in the SEC, and maybe an injury away from winning that LSU game. It really is just. I think it's a good look for South Carolina to show what this team could be, maybe next year. But it is just unfortunate how close they've been in some of these games, and for Alabama, you get to number 1 just 2 weeks ago. And now it really seems, even with this win, Bama still does not look right after that Vandy game.
No, they do not. It's really kind of a combination of everything. Jalen Milroe really didn't look amazing in this game. The defense is still a major question mark for me going down the stretch here. But listen, I said on here last week that I felt Bama was confidently going to roll in this game. This was the perfect bounce back spot, and it just didn't happen that way. Uh, but they were able to get it together near the end to kind of take control. But then they made the mistake. There's always the mistake of scoring the touchdown whenever you just slide down at the 2 yard line. You can run the clock out. They score. South Carolina gets the ball. They score the touchdown, but fail the 2-point conversion and then get the onside kick. And if it wasn't for the O lineman catching the pass after it got batted down that wasted like 20 seconds of clock, maybe they have a chance to get in field goal range to win it. But yeah, it's just brutal. South Carolina should be 5-1 right now. They should be 5-1, but unfortunately they're 3-3. And for Bama, they're somehow still 5-1. But looking at their schedule down the line, they got a lot of tough games left on that schedule. So we will see going down the line. But yeah, this was a surprisingly close game for me in South Carolina. Like you said, they're 3-3, but they are a legit 3-3. Let's get that out of the way.
Yeah, another team we're going to talk about that I think is better than what the record is showing with their performances here. Number 22 Pitt edges out Cal 17-15, and again, if we're talking about what the looks for the future could be for this Cal program, I'd say they have some pretty high hopes to look forward to. Because look, it's another close game against another top 25 team, or well, I guess against oh yeah, it was. I was thinking for some reason I was thinking they played Florida State last week, but that's not true. It was Miami that they played last week. So yes, two top 25 teams. They've played super close. They've been just there, and against Miami again, one could argue that they maybe should have won that game had they gotten a call to go their way. But it's a good run for Cal in their first year in the ACC. I know the record's not what you'd want it to be, But this is a team putting together a pretty competitive season and showing what they have what it takes to adjust to this conference realignment. And for Pitt, look, it's been a huge surprise how well this team's played, but I believe still undefeated now with this win against Cal. And boy, oh boy, with the ACC, another one, this other Power Four conference that kind of looks open as to who might be playing Clemson in that ACC championship. There's a team in Pittsburgh that's starting to rise up and show maybe they're the team to play Clemson in the ACC championship this year.
Yeah, it's the exact four contenders we thought in the ACC at the start of the year, right? Clemson, Miami, Pittsburgh, and SMU. Those are the top four in the ACC right now. Pittsburgh, it's been an incredible turnaround, especially given the stuff I said about them. I think it's in the preseason. I think it's due for me to talk about how good of a football team they've been. This is a game where it wasn't going well for them. The offense was struggling. Eli Holstein did not look that good, but the defense stepped up for them most of that game. And then when they trailed late, they were able to get on a drive, go down and score. But then the defense stepped up again, keeping California missing a field goal. This is a pretty complete Pitt team. And listen, Miami and Clemson, we still have question marks about them. But if one of them falls off, I mean, you're looking at this Pitt team. Now, obviously, Pitt and SMU play in 2 weeks, and what a matchup that's going to be. It's really going to decide who's going to be that third contender in the ACC. And then they still got to play Clemson down the line. But yeah, it's been incredible for Pittsburgh so far this season. And I'll just put my hand up in the air. I was definitely wrong about them in the preseason. I'll put my hand up and say I was wrong.
That's fair enough. Then we had domination in the Red River rivalry as number one Texas wins 34-3 over number 18 Oklahoma. And look, I'll just cut it short. This was not a ball game. Texas looked good, and Oklahoma has just been reeling over the last few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't put it any simpler than that. They just don't have an offense. And I know some people are like, why don't they just give Jackson Arnold a chance? I was like, well, the offense, no offense to Jackson Arnold, who I still think did get kind of screwed over with that whole benching in the Tennessee game. I really don't think he could have done that much better against this Texas team. Their offense has just struggled. They were without their top five wide receivers. They were playing their 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th string receivers in this game. Uh, they were up 3-0 at the end of the first quarter, and I was like, if this is a low scoring game, this is going exactly how OU wanted. But then Texas woke up in that second quarter. They were able to take control of the game, and they just dominated from then on. The thing that impressed me even more is Quinn Ewers really didn't look that good, and they still went out and dominated this game with their defense, with a really good ground game. They were able to dominate still. So that's a good look. It'll be another week this week for Texas where Quinn Ewers will be more back to 100%. So it was a good win for Texas. They remain number one in OU. You just got to find something consistent on offense. That is the big issue with them and could cause them issues down the line with some of the teams on their schedule.
Yeah. Then we have number four, Penn State. They avoid a classic Penn State loss against USC to get the win 33-30 in OT. But make no mistake about it. Penn State did not play their best game this week. But here's the thing about Penn State in the James Franklin era. They have these games where they show up. And look, I'll say this, USC is a better team than where they usually get that one loss they're not supposed to have. This USC team is better than the 3-3 record that they have. They definitely have shown flashes, but still, this is a game Penn State was supposed to win. The difference between this team and teams in years past is when they got down in these games, they give up and they just lose. In this game, Penn State did not give up. They came back in this game, they took it to overtime, and they got a huge win to show that this is a different team that does not give up. There's no quit. Even when this team gets down, they're going to come out and win the game. And that's what impressed me most with this Penn State win, even though this is a game they should have won, I think a little bit easier than this.
Yeah, I mean, look, they got down 20-6 at halftime. It really wasn't looking good. The offense was struggling. USC was stopping the run game in the first half. Everything looked like it was going at USC's way, and Penn State was going to lose with a chance to move up with the result of Oregon, Ohio State. They were going to screw up that opportunity. But then, second half happened. They went right down the field and scored, forced a punt, went right down the field, scored again. All of a sudden, we're tied up. And they made some key plays late, and some poor clock management by a certain Lincoln Riley gave them the chance to get that game to overtime. And then they were able to walk it off in overtime. But yeah, listen, we could talk about the Stars. Drew Aller, he threw 3 interceptions, but that fourth quarter drive late in the game was the best drive I had seen of Drew Aller's career. It was a phenomenal drive, multiple fourth down conversions where he is throwing dots down the middle of the field into tight windows. He was incredible on that drive. But I'll just say it like it is. Tyler freaking Warren was the star of this game. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't think Penn State's tight end was going to be the star of this game, but he was incredible. Over 200 yards receiving, snapped the football to the quarterback, and caught a touchdown on the same play. I mean, it was incredible. So great comeback win for Penn State. Now, to at least in my opinion, this all but guarantees Penn State a spot in the 12-team playoff. This win here, because you look at the rest of their schedule, they play Ohio State. If they lose to Ohio State, they are not going to drop that far. And then you look at the rest of their schedule, they could really afford a second loss, and I still think they could get in. So, in my opinion, with this win, Penn State just locked themselves into the 12-team playoff 100%.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think they're looking like one of the better teams in the country right now. Then we have the number 8 Tennessee Volunteers getting a 23-17 OT victory against Florida. They moved to 5-1. But let's put it like this: the flamethrower offense that we saw to start this season. Look, it started when they came to Fayetteville. The defense came and stifled them, and now again we see Florida. Even though Florida lost this game, 23 points. That is not where this offense was a few weeks ago. They were putting up 40-point games, and all of a sudden they're starting to slow down. It seems like maybe teams are starting to figure out how to defend this Tennessee offense.
I'm just going to be honest with you. If Florida was a more confident team, they had plenty of talent. If they were a more confident team and had a better record, they would have blown Tennessee out in this game. This should have been an easy Florida win, but this is not the same level of confidence for a Florida team with the couple of losses, with the questions around the coach, obviously. And Tennessee was able to come back and win it. But listen, the problem is their passing game has just taken a nosedive. Nico has struggled throwing the ball in this offense. They've gotten a pretty good ground attack, and their defense is still playing great. But passing the football has been their main struggle so far this season, and that's going to cost them in some games later on down the line if they don't figure out better ways to get that passing game going. I mean, that's what they have to do if they want to have any success against teams like Alabama, like Georgia. You're not going to be able to be one-dimensional, run the ball against those teams. That's what cost them almost losing to Florida in what would have been probably the biggest shocker of the weekend. But they were able to hang on and win. And look, they're still in the playoff hunt, but it is safe to say that based on their schedule, this week is a must win.
Yeah, I think with their one loss right now being to a currently unranked Arkansas team, it's going to be really hard to afford another loss on this record and be able to compete. But let's go into another team that's put themselves on super thin ice in the SEC and in that college football playoff conversation. A team I thought was going to be an easy in this year, no matter what happened. Number 13, LSU storms back to stun number 9, Ole Miss in OT in Death Valley. The end of this game was chef's kiss. This was a great finish to this game, back and forth. You didn't know it was going to happen. Like I said, look, LSU was down kind of late in this game. They surge back. They start stifling Lane Kiffin in this Ole Miss offense. Then all of a sudden, Ole Miss got the ball to start OT. Penalties, push them back and push them back. They have mistakes. They hit an insane field goal to scrounge out some points and force LSU to score. And then the first play, drop back and throw a beautiful touchdown to win the game and send the fans into pandemonium. This was a great game for LSU, and this was a great game for college football. Man, Brian Kelly comes out here. He wins a huge game. which is, again, that's a criticism that he's had throughout his career. He's a great coach, and sometimes he wins the big games, but a lot of times he comes up short. In this one, down late, but it's at home. Use those fans to come back and win the game. And for me, for number 9, Ole Miss, Jackson Dart said it best. They cannot make another mistake. They might already have put themselves in a corner, but they definitely cannot have another loss, or it is bye bye to the college football playoff for the Rebels.
Oh yeah, they're 100% gone if they lose another one. But Austin, I tried to tell you last week, the magic of Death Valley at night goes LSU's way every single time. It doesn't matter when that happens. I'll be dead honest with you. Ole Miss outplayed LSU most of this game. Most of this game, I'm saying Ole Miss is a way better team. Ole Miss is a way better team. But the magic of Death Valley and a place where I believe Brian Kelly is now 15-0 in night games at LSU, or 14-0, something along those lines. But it was incredible. I felt in the first half, I'm like, Ole Miss is a better team. They're going to win this game pretty confidently. But you saw late in the game some big throws from Garrett Nussmeier, some big plays for their defense, and then they got to overtime. You saw, like you said, Ole Miss just went backwards and backwards and backwards. And their kicker made a 57-yard field goal. Don't mind him. Phenomenal kick under that pressure at Death Valley, but no one cares about it because LSU went and scored one play later. But listen, this LSU team, this is a massive win and gives them really an opportunity to stay in that playoff conversation. But they have the game at Arkansas this weekend. Then you're at A&M and then Bama. That's a tough 3-game stretch there where you really maybe can afford one loss, maybe, but it can't be against Arkansas. It's got to be most likely to Texas A&M or Bama if you want to stay alive in the playoff race. And like you mentioned, Ole Miss, I like I said, I don't know how they lost this game. I really don't know how they lost this game, other than the magic of Baton Rouge at night. And yeah, they got to play Georgia still at home this year. And if they want to make the playoff, they have to win that game. That is no, they need to win it. They have to win it. So this was a massive game. It was phenomenal. In my opinion, the second best game of the weekend. Obviously, I'm assuming we're going to talk about number one here in a second. But this is what the SEC on ABC, whatever they made that deal, it's for games like this and for atmospheres like it was on Death Valley on Saturday night.
Yeah, let's just put it like this. I had a wedding to go to on Saturday. Fortunately, got home at night to be able to watch these two great games at the same time. Nearly gave me whiplash. Let's talk about the other great game from this weekend. Number 3, Oregon Ducks win a nail biter in Eugene. The big game that we all circled with this conference realignment. Oregon, Ohio State in Eugene. They get the job done 32-31 over number 2 Ohio State. And like I said, almost gave me whiplash. I've got one TV over here, got one TV over here. I'm turning back and forth because big play, big play, big play. And you can't take your eyes off these games. But I was impressed with the way the Ducks came through and got the job done in this one. It felt like Ohio State just, I mean, it felt like neither team could really stop the other one, but it felt like Ohio State was the team that kept making the big mistakes.
Yeah, they did make the big mistakes in this game, but they jumped out to an early lead, and that really kind of impressed me with it. There, I think they were up 14-6 early in the second quarter, and I'll just go ahead and put my hand up and say the under bet on this game was a disaster.
Yeah.
It was a major disaster. I think the over hit in the first half, or was really close to hitting in the first half of this game. But no, both teams, like you said, it really felt like neither team could stop them. All sides of both offenses played really well. Both defenses really struggled at points. To me, though, the thing that cost Ohio State was Oregon missed that extra point early on. They stay up by 8. Oregon takes the lead back 15-14, and then 22-21, 29-28, whatever. Why aren't you going for 2 at points to tie this football game up? That to me was playing it way too conservative in my mind. When it's like 15-14 first half, fine. 22-21 at halftime, fine. But you go up, you score a touchdown to go up 27-22. I'm going for 2 in the second half to make sure I am up by 7 points and we don't lose by 1 point and get into a situation like it happened late. where Oregon and Dan Lanning had the great 12th man on the field strategy that's now been banned, similar to the Kenny Pickett fake slide. It
Yeah.
lasted one whole week after it happened. Um, but then Will Howard, I get what Will Howard was trying to do. He's like, I'm going to step up. I'm going to slide down 2 seconds left. We got a timeout. We'll try a field goal, see if we can win it. But he took off just half a second too late. That's what cost him there, and that's what cost Ohio State the chance. But Austin, if you had told me that two top three teams on the road would lose because quarterbacks wouldn't pay attention to the clock, um, I wouldn't. It'd be weird. It'd be weird. It just
Yeah.
seems kind of odd that happened there. But Ohio State did not fall back a lot because these were two really evenly matched teams. This was a game, like you said, we all circled, shoot, even last year, we were like, Ohio State, Oregon in the Big Ten. This game is going to be incredible. And it ended up being incredible, like we all predicted, and a massive, massive win for Oregon. That's similar to what I said about Penn State, all but clinches them a spot in the college football playoff, too.
Yeah. This was a huge win that really proved themselves. Let's talk about our final game. And I'm going to throw a little shade here, so be ready. Travis Hunter, 3 receptions for 26 yards, 0 touchdowns, and not a single defensive statistic, drops a dud as the Buffaloes fall 31-28 versus number 18 K State. Travis Hunter then proceeds to do what Deion Sanders does best. He really learned from the master. Go to the media as soon as you make a fool of yourself and start slandering your next biggest opponent for whatever you're trying to win so that you can make them look bad in the media and try to win yourself back, which is exactly what Travis Hunter does. Goes on a podcast and said, if I had 95 receptions, how many yards do you think I would have? Somebody did the math. He'd still have 100 less receiving yards based on his current rates, 107 less receiving yards than Ashton Jeanty has rushing yards right now. So it doesn't really matter, but who cares? I'm tired of the Travis Hunter talk. I'll be honest, especially with a game as bad as this and a game as important as this for Colorado. He was downright abysmal. You talk about a guy who plays both sides of the ball, and we want to give him this hype in the Heisman just because he plays both sides of the ball. One, have we forgotten Charles Woodson? Have we forgotten the Heisman winner, both sides of the ball, Charles Woodson? One, that's criminal. We're acting like nobody's ever done this before, and it has been done. And it is impressive it's being done in the modern era. I'm not trying to discredit that. But you cannot play like this and then demand the Heisman. There is a guy who is playing better than maybe any running back we've ever seen since Barry Sanders was playing college football. And you want to tell me that the guy who poorly plays both sides of the ball in the biggest game of the season so far for his team is going to deserve the Heisman? To me, this is the end of the Heisman conversation for Travis Hunter. This team can't win the big games. He can't show up in the big games and record a single defensive statistic. Are you kidding me? And then you're going to go and demand that you're the Heisman and you should be getting all the votes and nobody should pay attention to the best running back we've seen in what, 40 something years? It's unbelievable. I'm disgusted. Look, I expected something like this from Deion Sanders, but for it to be spreading throughout the team, it's just another reason why Colorado and their players are so untouchable. Just at an NFL, just from an NFL perspective, they're so they have these huge egos and they're so self-centered. It's just unbelievable. I really am just flat out flabbergasted with the way Colorado's acted this season and with Travis Hunter's yapping immediately after having a terrible game. Dude, I'd want people to forget I was playing corner if I had this kind of game.
Um, Not gonna lie, I don't know how to follow that. Looking at the game perspective here. But listen, no, it was a good game to fall asleep to. I'll give it that. It was a fun game. Kansas State had control early on, and then Colorado made this late comeback, and then Avery Johnson with some big throws down the field. And the Travis Hunter thing. Look, I mean, it wasn't his best game. I know he got injured at a certain point with his shoulder, so I don't know. I I was halfway asleep trying to stay up and watch this, so I can't confirm if he came back in or not. I can't confirm that, but I will say the whole going on there saying, "Imagine if I had 95 catches" thing is I side with you on that part. That part's pretty ridiculous there. Um, yeah, if I had 95 catches in college football, I think I'd be pretty good too.
Yeah.
If you had 95 catches, I think you'd be pretty good too.
Yeah.
So I
Hit
mean,
95 catches. Stop talking about it.
yeah. So I'm not playing any hypothetical stuff here. I think Travis Hunter's really good. I think, like you said, we've seen he's doing great as the two way that we haven't seen since Charles Woodson. But let's just get this straight. Charles Woodson, and this is no, don't try and discredit Travis Hunter when I say it. Charles Woodson in that Michigan team. I highly recommend you watch the 1997 Heisman Trophy race, ESPN 30 for 30 documentary. Michigan had big game after big game after big game on that schedule, and every single game had a highlight of who? Charles Woodson stepping up, making interceptions, scoring massive touchdowns while they're just dominating teams in these big games. Um, so for and honestly with that, he's allowed to talk in my mind. I If I was him, I would do talking if I was that good. I don't blame him. But I'm not going to do any of this hypothetical BS that he's trying to go through there. But the game was great. Kansas State got the win on the road, which will help out their Big 12 chances tremendously, especially with Utah getting known that Cam Rising's out for the year. So uh listen, the hypothetical stuff's ridiculous. Even before this stuff happened, Ashton Jeanty was still the front runner in the Heisman to me. And he still is the front runner in the Heisman for me. So that's all I got to say on that. But it was a big win for Kansas State to show they can win the big game on the road in conference play.
Absolutely. They really needed it. Huge. So let's take a look now at this top 25. Um, and look, there's obviously going to be some shakeup from some pretty big games this weekend. At number one, Texas remains the same, but Oregon shifts up one spot to number two. Penn State up one spot to number three, and at number four, Ohio State drops down two to put themselves firmly still in this top five, and then Georgia stays at five. Um, Look, not much arguing here with the top five. Uh, Personally, I probably again I probably would have moved Ohio State down to five and moved Georgia up. I just haven't I'm not crazy about these last couple weeks, Georgia just staying firm at five. I get they lost to Alabama, but clearly I think we're seeing that that was a great game. And right now they look like the better team than Alabama. I think we need to stop holding this against them and let them move back into this top four. But again, these are the teams that I'd have in my top five regardless.
Yeah, I mean, this is the top five teams right now. Let's just get that out of the way. I get them leaving Georgia behind, leaving them at five. They did not look good against a team that many people considered the worst in the SEC this week. Gave up 31 to Mississippi State. That game was way closer than it really should have been. They've struggled the last 2 weeks, in all honesty, with me, with their defense. They've had poor tackling defensively over the last 2 weeks. So I could understand the argument there. But Austin, I wanted to bring a fun fact up for you here with
Yes, I
this top three, which is Texas, Oregon, and Penn State. This is the first AP top three without Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, or Michigan in 10 years. November 9th, 2014 was the last time that none of those teams were in the top three. So this is a weird top three, to say the least, in the recent years of college football. And I freaking love it. It's awesome there. I did appreciate them not dropping Ohio State too much because, like I said, I thought they played evenly with Oregon that whole game. And I get leaving Georgia based on that performance.
Yeah. I also like that they weren't too hasty to make Oregon the number one team in the nation. Obviously, we learned that the last time we had a top five matchup and that team, the team that won, shot up to number one, they immediately dropped it. And Oregon, again, we'll talk about it in a minute. They have a test this week, as much as you may not want to consider it. But before we move on, do you happen to have the top three teams from that last poll? I'd love to try and guess if you do.
I know Mississippi State was a part of it. I think Mississippi State
Wow.
was because that was the Dak Prescott. Yeah. Okay, I found it. So number one was Mississippi State, number two was Florida State, and number three was Oregon. This was the year of the first college football playoff whenever
Wow.
this happened. So, yeah, this poll also snaps a streak of 158 straight weeks with at least one of those five teams in the top three. 158 weeks. I mean, that is incredible. But no, it was 2014, the year Dak Prescott and Mississippi State took over, and Mariota won the Heisman. That was the top three that year.
That is unbelievable. Then let's go to number 6 here. You've got Miami, then Alabama at 7. But now we've got some newcomers into this top 10. You've got LSU shooting up 5 spots to become our number 8 team in the nation. You've got Iowa State joining the top 10, which I absolutely love to see. This is, I think, fun for all college football fans to see this 6-0 Iowa State team sitting at number 9. And then Clemson stands firm at number 10.
Man, yeah. I mean, I love it. I had Iowa State in the top 10 a week earlier with mine, but yeah, you love seeing them in the top 10. Look, like I said, they've been handling their business in the Big 12 thus far. They have looked really good all the way through. And to be honest, their schedule down the line, obviously they're playing UCF this weekend. I don't know how that game could go. They do play Texas Tech, which is proven to be a surprising contender in the Big 12. And then the rest of their games really look good until the season finale against Kansas State at home. That's a game that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. Last week of the season, they're hosting Kansas State. There is a realistic aspect where they play this final week of the season and then play each other a week later in the conference championship game, which would just be so weird. But based on how the Big 12 is setting up, there is a possibility with that. And with LSU, look, this is a big win over a team, again, that I felt outplayed them and able to win it. I think they deserve that right to move into the top 10. Of course, they have the trap game, I would say, this week in Fayetteville. They have a couple of games coming up. And then Clemson at 10, I did like them not moving again because, look, they played Wake Forest, who is not the same Wake Forest. They're going to get tested when they play Pitt down the line, but I got no problem with this top 10.
Yeah. Then let's start at 11. Well, actually, before I carry on, I had a point I was trying to make, and I'm just going to skip over myself. Um, there's a chance in this Big 12, maybe we see it shake out the same way we saw it shake out last year, where in the last 3 weeks of the season, we have 8 teams that are still up for grabs. In the last 2 weeks, we have 6 teams that are still up for grabs. And in the final week, we had 4 teams that were still eligible to make that conference championship. It very much looks like the Big 12 could possibly shake out that same similar way coming down the stretch here for this season.
I'll just pull up. So I think this is the top 8 right now where the conference standings. BYU 3-0, Iowa State 3-0, Texas Tech 3-0, Arizona State 2-1, Kansas State 2-1, Colorado 2-1, Cincinnati 2-1, and West Virginia 2-1. Those teams are all right with each other right now, and they still all got to play each other in some of these games. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how this Big 12 finishes. If it's anything like the finish last year, we are in for a wild one, Austin.
Yeah. Then at number 11, we've got Tennessee dropping down 3 spots. At number 12, we have Notre Dame dropping down 1 spot. At number 13, we've got BYU moving up 1. At 14, we've got A&M moving up 1. And at 15, we've got Boise State moving up 1. I love seeing Boise State in the top 15. I really like that the AP is being pretty inclusive with these non-power 4 schools because look, just frankly, it's going to be a part of the college football playoff. They're going to start valuing these teams because at least one of these teams gets a chance to get in. Um, so I think it's absolutely right for the AP poll because usually they wait till the last couple weeks of the season to start putting these teams in. So I like that they're starting to kind of open it up because that's the way college football is going. But look, I'll state it again. I don't like Notre Dame moving down. I would have been perfectly fine with them staying at 11. I think over the last couple of weeks they've looked better than Tennessee. I think last week they looked better than Tennessee. I don't really get the argument why Tennessee couldn't scoot down one more spot and why Notre Dame couldn't stand firm. To me, that just doesn't make a lot of sense.
To me, my question's not really with that. It's with Tennessee moving down 3 spots, but how come Bama doesn't drop down 3 spots?
That's fair.
Neither one of them looked good last week in games that they really, I feel like, should have confidently won. So I don't get why Tennessee gets punished for it, but Alabama doesn't. And I don't really understand that. If you want my honest opinion, um, you want my honest opinion? I think BYU and Notre Dame should be in the top 10, and Bama and Tennessee need to be dropped out. That's just my honest opinion. BYU is so much fun. They went out and dominated Arizona this week. It was so much fun to watch them play. They have been my favorite so far. I will say, besides Iowa State, those two are really my favorite stories so far this college football season because they are two teams that we thought, well, clarify Iowa State maybe. I don't want to hear. I don't think anyone had BYU 6-0 at this point.
No.
So it was incredible to see there. But I think BYU and Notre Dame should be top 10. I don't believe Bama and Tennessee should be there right now. The winner of who plays between them this week then maybe could enter the top 10 for me. But yeah, I don't think either one of them should be top 10 based on the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I can agree with that there. Then at number 16, we've got Indiana, who rises up 2 more spots. Kansas State gets them another spot back up with 17. We don't have a stupid tie at 18 this week where 20 teams are tied for one spot. Let's just give them one number each. Finally,
Yeah.
the AP polls decided to do that. It's not really top 25 if 3 teams are number 18. So then at 18, we have Ole Miss, who drops down 9 spots. Missouri moves up 2 to 19. Pitt moves up 2 to 20. SMU up 4 to 21. Illinois up 1 to 22. Army enters the rankings at 23, which is what we really needed. At 24, Michigan stands firm. And at 25, Navy enters the rankings. That's right. We've got triple option service academies in in the AP top 25 for the first time in 60 years. This is unbelievable. It's awesome. I love the way the bottom of this top 25 shook out. Man, it is going to be so exciting to see what can happen. Army and Navy, man, these two teams are playing unbelievable football right now.
I mean, listen, it's going to be tough for it to happen, but we are all begging for an undefeated Army Navy game. We are begging for it. The college football world would savor that game for a lifetime. They'd be like, where were you when undefeated Army played undefeated Navy in December 2024? It'd be like, I was sitting on my couch watching this triple option greatness. Um, but listen, I'm happy for both of them. I really think that down the stretch they really could enter that game 10-1, both of them. I think their one loss could be Notre Dame. They both have to play Notre Dame still. Um, and then for me with Ole Miss, this ranking dropping them down to 18. Now you even if you beat Georgia, I don't even know if there's a 100% guarantee that you're getting in with that with how far down they dropped courtesy of that. They have to not only win these next couple of weeks against Oklahoma and Arkansas, they have to win convincingly to move up with some of these teams that have clearly shown they're going to stay up there in that top 12. But forget about them. Army and Navy are ranked, folks, at the same time for the first time in 60 years. You'll love to see it. I would also love to see if Vanderbilt was ranked. That would make me feel better. And ULM. And ULM.
Yeah, well, uh, when we talk about some games this week, at least one spot open up in this top 25. We'll get to that game in just a moment. But let's start with our teams of the week here. At number 5, I had Texas. I like the way that with Cam Ewers not Cam Quinn Ewers coming back. I don't even know what Cam Ewers.
You
With
got
Quinn,
Cam Rising and Quinn Ewers mixed up, which Cam
yeah,
Rising did play at Texas. So, or like, was it Texas? So I could see how you mixed them up.
Quinn Ewers coming back from this game. Like you said, it wasn't his necessarily best performance, But this team still came out and dominated in a game that's usually close, no matter what the records are coming into this game. So I thought this was a big win for Texas to keep the momentum going. At number 4, I went with Kansas State. Look, you're coming into a big matchup on the road in the Big 12. Look, this team hasn't looked great on the road, but they come out and get a big win in conference to keep themselves rolling in the Big 12. At number 3, I went with Arizona State, a sneaky 5-1, a big win over a top 25 team, and really putting themselves in prime position for a Big Ten title shot if they can keep it going. And then I think 1 and 2 are going to be obvious, but at 2, I've got LSU. Huge win, huge comeback, big win against a team, like you said, that probably outplayed them most of this game. And at number 1, I had to go with Oregon. Even though you're at home, this was a big game to show that, hey, just because we're new to the Big Ten doesn't mean we're going to be pushed around. We're still going to be a powerhouse in college football.
All right, so a couple of similarities there. One difference though, I got Nevada in as my number 5 team. They took down Oregon State at home this weekend, and it was a big upset for them, especially given how many people really didn't think they'd be winning 3 games this year based on what people thought the roster was going to be. But they got the big win over Oregon State, had to put them in there. Number 4, I went with LSU. This was a massive win. Like I said, I felt like Ole Miss outplayed them, and they just didn't care. They took that Baton Rouge Saturday night magic and they used it to win this game. Number 3, I'd put Penn State. Look, this was a gutsy win for the Nittany Lions, and I was truly impressed with their ability to come back and win this game. So they had to be in there. And then, similar to what you said, number 1 and 2 were easy for me. Number 2, Arizona State. They have been a phenomenal story this year as well in the Big 12. Cam Scatterbo is a legend. Let's just say, if it wasn't for Ashton Genty, I'd put him up at number 1 in my Heisman. And then number 1, Oregon. Listen, you win it in a big matchup like that, your first true test in Big Ten play. You handle your business and win there, and now set yourselves up really good for the rest of the season. And it was just a phenomenal performance by them. They had to be number 1. And Austin, based on what I saw in Instagram polls, a lot of people, I think, agreed.
Yeah, this was a clean sweep for the Oregon Ducks. They got the job done on social media. It was no question for me, you, or anybody else. The Oregon Ducks are the team, the Bold Tech Podcast team of the week.
Yeah, rightfully deserved getting the big win. Look, this is the game everyone was going to watch. This is the game everyone was tuning in saying, which of these teams looks the most elite? And really, they were dead even, but Oregon was the bit of difference at the end of the day. They deserve to be our number 1 team of the week. So a big congrats to them.
Absolutely. And then let's get into these player of the weeks. At number 5, I had Travis Franklin, a safety out of Jackson State. Look, this guy had a handful of tackles. He had a pick six and he had a fumble recovery. He was doing it all in a big win for Jacksonville State. Uh, then at number 4, I had Evan Bullock, quarterback from Louisiana Tech. Huge game, throwing the football. I can't remember the exact yardage, but well over 350 yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Really was slinging the ball across the yard. At number 3, I went Dylan Gabriel. Oh, look, I've just been really in love with the way Dylan Gabriel's played for Oregon this year. His yardage isn't super crazy, but he's so efficient. They score a lot. He throws a lot of touchdowns. He rushes a lot of touchdowns. He plays some unbelievable college football, and he's such a smart player. And maybe that comes with being the 5th-year senior, but he's just so smart on the field. It's just hard not to count Dylan Gabriel after a big performance. At number 2, I went with Cam Scatterbo. Like you said, this guy has been unbelievable this season, and he had another huge game for Arizona State against a big time opponent in Utah. But at number 1, I went with the guy who's been, I think, number 1 on my list a long time ago this season. But I went with Jamal Haynes, running back out of Georgia Tech. He had another 170-yard rushing game. He had 2 or 3 rushing touchdowns. He really is kind of the life force of that Georgia Tech rushing offense. And so anytime this guy has a big game, Georgia Tech's going to have a big game.
I mean, don't forget the 68-yard touchdown to seal it at the very end of regulation, too. So, our list are pretty different. I'm not gonna lie. So my number five, I had Braylon Love, linebacker from Pittsburgh. 3 sack performance by him. Had to show him some love in this Pitt defense for their great win this week. Number four, I got Caleb Johnson, running back from Iowa. I'm gonna be honest with you. If it wasn't for Cam Scatterboom and Ashton Genty, this guy's probably the number 3 running back in the country based on what he has done this year. He has been incredible. Had 100 and hold on, I had the stat: 166 yards, 2 touchdowns against what's been a pretty good Washington defense. So I had to show him some love. Number 3, first time you heard this name, we got Tawee Walker, running back for Wisconsin, dominated against what has been a really, really solid Rutgers defense. Dominated 198 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was incredible against, like I said, a really strong Rutgers defense we've seen all year. Had to show him love. Number 2, Cam Scatterboom. Like I said, this is the second time I've had him on my list. He is my guy. He is awesome, and he carried them to the win over Utah on Friday night. And number 1, Austin, I'm just going to be flat honest when I say this. I am offended this man is not in your top 5 at all. Tyler Warren, tight end from Penn State, over 200 yards receiving. He was the Penn State offense in this game. He was incredible. And like I said, Austin, I am personally offended that he is not anywhere in your top 5. I am really offended by this.
I understand, but I took this opportunity as a time to look at some of the lesser known games. Look, I only took one player from the big games this weekend from the big teams. I went with Jacksonville State, Louisiana Tech, Georgia Tech, and Arizona State. I tried to spread mine out a little bit because the last couple of weeks I focused really hard on these Power Four schools and these real big names. So I wanted to go out and show some love around college football this week.
I don't care.
That's fair enough. Well, on the polls, we had Tyler Warren and Cam Scatabo winning over votes. And unfortunately, that means it comes down to the one guy who is on both of our lists,
Yep.
Cam Scatabo out of Arizona State. This guy is our Michael Penix Bold Take Podcast Player of the Week. I know it's also the name of the Bold Take Podcast Player of the Year, but any Michael Penix love that this podcast can give, it's going to give.
Honestly, we could consider making it the Ashton Genty Player of the Week with the
That's
amount of
true.
times that he's been on it this year. He honestly could have been on our list this week. He had 200 yards rushing against Hawaii. He could have been on our list this week, but he's been on it so much. I think we both were like, we can't put him on again. We got to find other people. But no, this
Yeah.
was incredible for Cam Scatabo. I love the guy. I hope he continues to dominate the Big 12. Really happy for him. And once again, Austin, not matching up again. You'll love to see it.
Yeah, it's really been fun. Only one time it's happened this year. Really been a blast to kind of see just the diversity we bring. I think we've just gotten better at, like I said, finding different players and really doing some digging this year, which I think makes this 10 times more fun. But let's take a look at some game previews for this next coming weekend. Look, a big game. We're going to talk about it here. Let's talk about some trap games. We've got number 2 Oregon versus Purdue on the road. And look, Purdue at home, they love to play these top 5 ranked Big Ten opponents at home at night. It's going to be rocking. This is not going to be an easy game for Oregon, especially with how close they just played Illinois, who played like we said, Luke Altmaier's been playing virtually flawless all season, and they still kept it very, very close into overtime. I don't think Oregon's going to lose this game, but I definitely think Oregon can't get caught sleeping after having a big win against Oregon or Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, you like we've said trap game a million times on here. You want definition of a trap game is going on the road on Friday night against a 1-5 team. This is the definition of do not fall for the trap here. I'm excited to see what the Ryan Brown kid for Purdue is going to do in this game. I'm excited to see how he builds off that performance against what was a pretty solid Illinois defense. How will he perform against an Oregon team who's coming off a big win against Ohio State and really struggled stopping Ohio State in this game? So, but obviously, let's address it like it is. Jeff Brom is not at Purdue anymore, which to me kind of hurts the chances of it all
Yeah.
honestly happening because he is a dang good football coach. I'm a root for Purdue in this game. I'm not going to bet the spread because I want to, but I'm scared as well that it could be an Oregon blowout. But Oregon needs to come out from the get go and make this not a game early. If they let Purdue hang around, similar to what Alabama did with Vanderbilt, you let them hang around and stay in front in this game for a bit, they start to build more confidence and more belief happening.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Then another game. Look, I've got several ranked teams going on the road this week. We've got number 12, Notre Dame, going on the road against Georgia Tech. Look, Georgia Tech's shown their flashes. They've got a good running game. And look, Notre Dame, while they've recovered since that Northern Illinois loss, the run game was huge for Northern Illinois in that game. And if they can get this game, a running game going with Haynes King and Jamal Haynes, it could be trouble for a solid Notre Dame defense, but one that has struggled to stop the run at points in this game. And then if that defense can come and play and limit Riley Leonard and keep him contained, boy, this could be a game. I think Notre Dame again will pull this out, but you can't get caught sleeping, especially with how competent this Georgia Tech team is this season.
Yeah, to me, this is two teams that are, I almost want to say identical. You have two really strong running quarterbacks, two really solid run games, two really solid defenses going at it. I mean, this is going to be a physical matchup. I really don't know if I see a lot of points scored here because I just think these two teams are going to be clashing the whole time. Ground heavy offenses. I think this is going to be like, I think it's going to be a really close game. And I would feel a lot more confident if it was at Georgia Tech. Quit making neutral site games randomly happen, college football. This game at Georgia Tech would be electric, an electric atmosphere. But no, you take it and you put it in an NFL stadium. I hate it. I think that ultimately might be something that hurts Georgia Tech in that game. So I most likely think Notre Dame hangs on to win, but I think it'll be really close. And yeah, I just hate them playing in an NFL stadium when the environment at Georgia Tech would be incredible.
Yeah, especially against a top 12 team. Then we've got number 8 LSU going on the road to Fayetteville to face the Razorbacks. And look, this is huge for the Razorbacks. You're coming out of a bye week. You just, in your last game, beat a top team in the nation. What, number 4? Uh, Tennessee.
Like number 4, number 3.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And now you get a chance to show that tough defense. And we already saw Nussmeier. He made a lot of mistakes in that Ole Miss game. This is a good defense that could force him to do the same. And in a crazy environment on the road, man, the fans are going to show out in Fayetteville. This is going to be, I think, a super airtight game. Could give the Hogs a chance to get themselves ranked in the top 25.
Yeah, you talked about having whiplash during LSU Ole Miss. This is going to be me having whiplash with this game and Georgia Texas on Saturday. I'm just going to be like looking like this with you. I'm like, what's going on here? Oh, did Georgia score? Oh, Arkansas. But looking at this game, this is huge for both sides. Number one, you're looking at LSU. You win this game, this really sets you up for a potential playoff berth, almost guaranteed to happen if you're able to go 1-1 in the next two games. For Arkansas, you win this game, you're 5-2 on the year. You move to, I think, 3-1 in SEC play, if I'm correct.
Yep.
Yeah, they'd be 3-1. You'd be near the top of the conference, and people would start taking the Hogs more seriously and wonder, could they be a surprise contender in the SEC? This is massive for both sides, and there's a possible letdown spot for each side. You'll get LSU had the phenomenal win against Ole Miss last week, and all the momentum building off that. Now you're going on the road in a tough environment. I see a letdown spot there. For Arkansas, you beat Tennessee. Phenomenal win. Fans stormed the field. Great. But then you have a week off after it, which, in my personal opinion, I love that they got a week off for Taylon Green to be healthy. I'm told he's supposed to play. But I kind of wish it would have kept on going instead of having a week off to keep on building on the momentum. So there's a possible falling flat for both teams in this game, in my opinion. But like you said, Nussmeier's made turnovers. He hasn't been 100% all the time in the last couple of weeks, especially that Ole Miss game. Um, I am expecting a ground heavy attack by Arkansas in this game with Taylon Green not being 100%. or using Malachi Singleton in some formations against this LSU team. But this should be a great matchup. And I hate that it's on at the same time as a top 5 matchup that I'm going to have to keep track of both of them.
Yeah. And then the final game preview we're going to do is a game that I think is fun, a classic Big 12 matchup. Everybody remembers this one from way back in the day. Arizona State is 5-1, taking on 4-2 Cincinnati. I think these are two teams that have really been surprising with how well they've played so far this season. And now they're going to clash in a matchup in the Big 12 that's going to push one team closer to the top and push one team closer to the bottom. I really like this matchup. I think it's going to be a fun game, and it's one that I think is going to be an underrated matchup to watch this weekend.
It's big, especially for Arizona State. How is Jeff Sims going to look? This Cincinnati team, 4-2, not many people talking about them. They had a really solid defensive performance throughout most of the season to start. The offense has been questionable at points, but they've been a ground heavy offense. Similar to Arizona State, I expect this to be a tight game throughout, especially with Jeff Sims being in there. I don't know about his passing ability. I think his running ability helps them be a more electric run game. But if I had to pick someone, I'd probably give an edge to Cincinnati here. I think being at home, Jeff Sims starting on the road in an environment like that against a good defense like that, I would probably lean Cincinnati's way. But these are two good defenses and two ground games going head to head. And it sucks that it's on ESPN Plus, but I will be keeping an eye on that game on Saturday. It's going to be a fun one.
Yes, but let's get into these game picks. Starting off with a battle to probably stay ranked. Number 24 Michigan takes on number 22 Illinois. And look, for Illinois, this is still a pretty big matchup, but it's not as big as this looked at the beginning of the year. Defending national champions, they were a top 10 team, but now they've kind of slid. They're 4-2. They've clearly shown through this many weeks that they've got three guys on roster listed as quarterback who cannot play the position at all. This is a great Illinois defense. I think this has been a complete paradigm shift, really. I think coming into this game, Illinois at home, who's played great at home and has a great defense against a not very good offense, I think they look like the favorite, and this would be a huge letdown, I think, if Illinois were to lose this game to Michigan.
I mean, look, just to be simple with you, I'm picking Illinois solely because they've got a quarterback and Michigan doesn't. I mean, that's the end of the day. They're both solid defensive units. They both run the ball really well, but one team has a quarterback, one does not. That's just the end of the discussion for me. And also, it's at Illinois, so this to me is an easy win for Illinois. I see them handling it. I don't know how they're a 4-point underdog in this game. I don't get that at all. But yeah, I'm going to roll with Illinois to win pretty comfortably because if one of them has to go on a drive late in the game to throw the football, I'm leaning Illinois' way.
Yeah, obviously I'm with you there. I'm going to take Illinois in this one. Then we've got number 7 Alabama versus a number 11 Tennessee. Two teams 2 weeks ago had huge losses as top 5 teams. Then last week, both teams underwhelmed and an opportunity to really show a big bounce back win. Now, one of these teams needs to get this top 11, basically top 10 win to stay relevant, to stay in the hunt. And the other one is going to fall and have 2 losses in conference this early in the season.
Man, I mean, you looked at this a few weeks, like 2 weeks ago, this was potentially one versus number 3. And like you said, the last 2 weeks, both teams have fallen off a cliff really with their performances. Man, this is a tough one for me. These are two desperate football teams that are going to go head to head and know we cannot lose this game because both teams have games on their schedule that I think they could lose down the line. Tennessee, they still have to play Georgia. Bama, they still have to play in Baton Rouge, which I'm assuming will be a night game, which is already enough of a test as it is. So these are two desperate teams. It's going to be two weaknesses going head to head. The weakness of the Tennessee offense lately against the weakness of that Alabama defense. And you want my honest opinion, though? I could see it where Tennessee wins it, but I'm going to roll with the veteran quarterback in this one. I'm going to roll with Jalen Milroe. I think this defense, as struggling as it has been, is able to do enough to stop this Tennessee offense and shut them down for most parts of this game. I'm going to take Bama to win this game. I'm going to say by 7 to 10 points. I think they'll be able to win it and stay up there relevant in those rankings. Just comes down to me with these two teams kind of struggling. It comes down to which veteran leader or which quarterback do I trust more. And I've seen some great heroics from Jalen Milroe. Have yet to see him from Nico. He might prove me on Saturday, but I'm going to roll with Jalen.
Yeah, I'm going with Bama for the very same reasons. My biggest thing here is that the big weakness in Tennessee's offense, I think, is that teams are starting to figure Nico out, and he's just young and inexperienced. And he's a great quarterback, and I think he's just going to continue to grow. But I think teams are starting to figure out the way this passing offense works and starting to make him uncomfortable, and that lack of experience is starting to hurt them. Where with Jalen Milroe, he's going to be able to make the big plays and have the big opportunities. I think Alabama's defense finds a way to bounce back after a rough couple of weeks, and they make some big plays and win this game and rightfully push themselves maybe back into a conversation for top five. Uh, Finally, we've got the biggest game of the week, one that might clear a spot for Alabama or Tennessee into this top five. That's Georgia versus Texas. Man, this is going to be a clash in the SEC. And again, I know I've said it the last couple of weeks, but this is what the SEC wanted with conference realignment. This is why they brought in Texas, why they brought in Oklahoma, so that every single week they'd have two top 10 matchups at least. And now they get another one that is just going to be thrilling and exciting. Number one versus number five. Who do you got in this one?
Oh man, I mean, listen, every single part of me is telling me to go with Texas. They have looked like the better team. They have dominated all season long. They've looked really good, especially last week in the Red River rivalry. But listen to me. I am not going to bet against I'm not going to bet against Kirby Smart when he's not playing Alabama. He's won 50 straight games against teams that are not Alabama. I am going to roll with Georgia to go in and win this football game. I'm just having a hard time betting against Kirby Smart here in this situation. Plus, we talk about it all the time. You don't think he won't get this team fired up to play in this game? You're telling me he's not going to have them fired up when no one's giving them a chance in a top five matchup? This is Georgia to me.
Yeah, I really wanted to go with Georgia. I wanted to go with Kirby Smart, but look, I'm going to stick to Texas here. Uh, I think, a lot of things you're saying make a lot of sense. I think this would be a great opportunity for Georgia to fire themselves up, get this defense on the right track. But I think Texas just looks better, and they played so well last week, even with you were struggling. I think another week back, another chance to get healthier. I think he's going to come out and play a really good game and really solidify Texas as that number one team in the country. But now let's get into the bet of the week. And how many bet of the week she got for us this week?
I only got one this week. We went
Okay.
three last week. I'm only giving you one this week. But for my one bet of the week, there's a couple I was looking at. To me, I look at Nebraska, Indiana in this one. Indiana ranked 16th in the country, hosting 5-1 Nebraska. This is a big matchup for Indiana. Their first true tough test of the season, I would say, through 6 weeks against a really solid defense in Nebraska. 6.5 points is way too much for me. I'm going to take Nebraska plus 6.5. I think their defense and them could really win this game outright at Indiana. But if they don't win, I think they can definitely keep it within 6.5. Nebraska plus 6.5 is my bold take bet of the week.
I like it. I like it. Okay. I'm going to throw two out here. It's really going to be one, but it's going to be two. Just one as like, you should have known I was going to say this, and then one actual pick here. I should have known. Look, I like a big spread. This one just feels too easy. I'm sure you know exactly which game I'm talking about. I got Purdue plus 27.5 against Oregon. I think this game is I don't think it'll be too much closer than 27.5, but I think Purdue will keep it close and be able to stay within range of Oregon in this one, especially with the fans going crazy. But my big one, I'm going to go with Wisconsin versus Northwestern under 41.5. I think these are two gritty teams. I think this game's going to stay low scoring and keep it under 41.5.
You know, You know what? Just for that, I will say, do you want to hear? I'll go ahead and say the second one I almost chose. If you
Okay.
want to hear that. So this one, I just saw it and it felt way too obvious for me. The spread is the not the spread, the total is so ridiculously high that I can't place an over on it. I'm going to take New Mexico at Utah State under 78 points, Austin.
Wow.
Under 78. I saw it. I was like, there's no, I'm not saying that either team's going to, I mean, they could be a 45-42 game, but it's just so, it's way too high for me to go the over. I can't do it. If it was like at 70, I'd be like, you know what, let's have some fun. I'll go over. But 78, I can't do it. So you can take under 78 in the Utah State New Mexico game.
Well, I love to hear that. That's a fun one. Um, but look, it's going to be a great weekend of college football. We've got some great matchups coming up. Even though not every single matchup is a ranked matchup, we've got some big games between some talented teams, some teams on the cusp of top 25. Look, it's going to be a fun weekend. But that's going to do it for us here at the Bold Stake Podcast. Make sure to tune in tomorrow. Our NFL episode will be coming out. We've got some great talk there. Obviously, something huge that nobody else is talking about has happened this week. And so the Bold Take Podcast can be the first ones to break it. But that's Austin Waiter. I'm Austin Hill. We want to thank you for listening.